He appears only briefly, a man who walked with God, and then he was no more, because God took him. But the Ethiopian Bible, one of the oldest and most complete biblical texts in existence, reveals a far greater story. Here, Enoch is not just a footnote in history. He becomes a traveler of realms unseen, a witness to the divine, and a recorder of mysteries that touch both the cosmos and the human soul. The human fascination with the unknown, what lies beyond our senses, beyond our skies, beyond our world, has never faded. From the earliest civilizations to modern society, we have looked upward and wondered, what exists above us? What secrets do the heavens hold? This curiosity, universal and timeless, finds a voice in the story of Enoch. His journey is not merely a tale of angels and cosmic realms. It is a reflection of humanity's enduring desire to glimpse the unimaginable. It is about our longing to understand the forces that govern existence and to encounter the divine in ways that challenge the boundaries of reality itself. Historically, Enoch occupies a unique place in biblical literature. He did not face death as the rest of mankind. Instead, he was taken directly by God, leaving behind a legacy shrouded in mystery. The Ethiopian Book of Enoch, sometimes called 1 Enoch, expands on this narrative with extraordinary detail. It describes his ascension through multiple heavens, each more wondrous and terrifying than the last, where he encounters angels, celestial courts, and visions of creation and judgment. These accounts are not mere flights of fancy. They are deeply rooted in ancient tradition, passed down through generations, preserving knowledge that many modern readers have never encountered. As we prepare to explore this story, it is important to recognize what makes it extraordinary. Enoch's journey is not linear. It is layered with experiences that defy ordinary understanding. He sees realms where angels oversee the elements, monitor human deeds, and guard cosmic secrets. He witnesses punishments that highlight divine justice and mercy, and he glimpses paradises beyond imagination. Yet among these wonders lie warnings, visions of beings and events that should not exist within human comprehension, creatures of enormous stature, forces of divine judgment, and mysteries deliberately hidden from mankind. The Ethiopian texts insist that these revelations were granted to Enoch not for mere curiosity, but to prepare humanity to understand the scope of divine order and the consequences of defiance. Imagine for a moment the awe Enoch must have felt as he moved from one heaven to another. Each level reveals more about the structure of creation, the hierarchy of angels, and the moral weight of human actions. What he saw was intended to teach lessons far beyond what we normally learn from earthly life. And yet, despite the grandeur and terror, Enoch remained a bridge between the divine and human realms, a messenger carrying knowledge that could transform understanding if only it were approached with reverence and faith. The story resonates even today because it confronts us with questions that are timeless. What is our place in creation? How do our actions ripple across the universe? And what truths are hidden from us, waiting for those willing to seek them carefully? Throughout this documentary, we will follow Enoch's extraordinary passage through the 10 heavens, a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the cosmos, about angels, and about God's interaction with humanity. Each heaven presents its own marvels, dangers, and revelations, showing both the beauty and the gravity of divine law. This is not a story of fiction. It is a sacred narrative preserved over millennia, meant to inspire contemplation, reflection, and awe. As we move forward, keep your mind open, your curiosity alive, and your attention focused on the details that unfold, because each revelation will build upon the last, guiding us deeper into the unseen world that Enoch walked. Before we step further into this journey, take a moment to become part of this exploration. Subscribe to the Bible Says channel to follow the full story of Enoch and the 10 heavens. Send a super thanks if you want to support the creation of more videos like this. And as you watch, share your experience with us. Comment your name, the city you are watching from, and the exact time when you saw this video. If you wish to explore further, the complete Bible 88 books and the Book of Enoch in English are available via the link in the description. Your participation ensures that these ancient stories continue to reach new audiences, revealing mysteries that have been preserved through generations. For thousands of years, believers have been captivated by the mystery and divine favor that surrounded Enoch's life. He was more than just a name in the genealogies of Genesis. Enoch stands out in a world where human existence is short. He is described in Genesis 5:24 with the straightforward yet profound statement, "Enoch walked with God, then he was no more because God took him." These succinct and mysterious words allude to a life that went beyond the typical course of mortality and was lived in intimate communion with the divine. Enoch's journey took him to places that ordinary people could only dream of, in contrast to other members of his lineage who lived and died. His legacy has influenced innumerable interpretations and writings, particularly in the Ethiopian Bible's preserved texts. For Enoch, walking with God was not a passive experience. It suggested a purposeful, conscious devotion and a recurring awareness of the divine presence that influenced his choices, actions, and thoughts. Despite being completely human, this man had a deep understanding of holiness. His life served as a reflection of the conflict that exists between human curiosity and obedience, between the need to be humble in order to stay in accordance with God's will and the desire to explore the unknown. Because he dealt with issues like the meaning of life, the secrets of the cosmos, and the difficulty of staying faithful in a world full of distractions, temptations, and uncertainties, he is relatable, not because he was flawless. Enoch demonstrated his intimacy with God in ways that went beyond ceremonial practices or outward manifestations of religiosity. According to the scriptures, one has an ongoing, nearly conversational relationship with the Creator. This man recognized that faith was about a continuous synchronization of the heart and mind with divine principles, not just about rituals or rules. The path of righteousness frequently requires courage, perseverance, and the willingness to venture into unknown territory, both physically and spiritually. His life serves as a mirror for anyone who has ever struggled with doubt or sought guidance. A more thorough look at the remarkable aspects of his life can be found in the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, an old manuscript that has been preserved outside the conventional canon of Western scriptures. Enoch is portrayed in this text as a visionary who was selected to see and document the secrets of the heavens, secrets that regular people were never supposed to see, rather than just as a good man. Angelic realms, celestial beings, and divine phenomena are made accessible to him, highlighting the vastness and intricacy of creation. These texts build upon the Genesis story, transforming it into a story that includes celestial hierarchies, cosmic journeys, and the moral laws that govern the cosmos. Combining these extra stories with the fleeting allusions in Genesis, Enoch becomes a person who unites the divine and the human, whose experiences function as both revelation and teaching. Enoch was still very much a human being in spite of his high position and unusual experiences. He struggled with understanding, with questions, and with circumstances that required judgment. His interactions with the angels and the visions he receives demonstrate his humanity. Instead of watching passively, he participates, learns, and occasionally finds it difficult to make sense of what he sees. He is compelling and relatable because of his human vulnerability and divine access. Viewers are able to identify with Enoch's wonder, his curiosity, and the hesitancy that comes with coming across the extraordinary. It serves as a reminder that spiritual insight frequently comes with difficulty, and that people who have a close relationship with God do so through a conscious process of faith and introspection, rather than without effort or understanding. For generations, people have been fascinated by Enoch's unexplained disappearance from the world of the living. In a way that defies common comprehension, the phrase, "God took him," suggests a departure from everyday life. It alludes to a metamorphosis, a transition into a state beyond death, and a final union with the divine. The significance of this event has been disputed by academics and theologians who have argued over whether it symbolizes spiritual exaltation, physical ascension, or a combination of the two. This event is depicted in the Ethiopian Bible as the pinnacle of his obedient life and as evidence of the benefits of closely following God's will. It supports the idea that Enoch's experiences were not just individual triumphs, but rather were entwined with a larger cosmic order in which wisdom, obedience, and alertness have far-reaching effects. The contrast between the lives of ordinary people and those selected for extraordinary insight is another instructive aspect of his story. The visible world is where most people live and die. But Enoch's life provides insight into the layers of existence that are invisible to the naked eye. He emphasizes that knowledge of the divine is not bestowed lightly by assuming the roles of witness, messenger, and recorder. It is a privilege that comes with responsibility, requiring discernment, humility, and respect for the limits that the Creator has established. Enoch is a timeless figure for contemplation because of this framing, which teaches audiences today about the fine line that separates ambition from obedience, curiosity from reverence. Furthermore, Enoch's life serves as an example of the value of moral and spiritual integrity in the quest for knowledge. His experiences imply that being close to the divine is a test of character as well as a reward. His decisions, his interactions with what he observes, and his unshakable faith in God all support a theme that runs throughout both the Ethiopian and Genesis texts, that righteousness provides access to opportunities and insights that would otherwise go unnoticed. Enoch is a living example of an aspirational yet achievable life, demonstrating how constant dedication, moral behavior, and careful introspect can develop spiritual depth. Enoch also acts as a link between generations throughout his story. He preserves knowledge that would be passed down to later figures, such as Noah and other members of the biblical line, by tying the antediluvian world to revelations in the future. His narrative places a strong emphasis on continuity, demonstrating how one person's choices and actions can have an impact that extends well beyond their own lifetime. Enoch's life thus serves as a lesson in power, accountability, and the long-lasting effects of fully and intentionally living out one's faith. Finally, recurring allusions in various texts support Enoch's legitimacy as a historical and spiritual figure. The Ethiopian Bible broadens the vision, Genesis offers the first glimpse, and subsequent customs continue to recognize his remarkable role. Combining these sources gives us a coherent image of a man who is exceptionally spiritually attuned and whose life defies accepted ideas about existence, time, and human potential. The idea that the world may have hidden layers and that people who follow God faithfully may catch a glimpse of realities beyond our comprehension, acting as both messengers and witnesses of a divine reality that permeates the entire universe, is presented to us through Enoch. Most people are unaware of how complex and multi-layered the heavens are, as depicted in the ancient texts. The Ethiopian Book of Enoch states that creation is arranged into 10 separate heavens, each with its own inhabitants, mysteries, and purpose. It is not limited to the sky above or the spiritual realm in general terms. These heavens are not just metaphorical, they are organized places where angels enforce cosmic laws, where divine order is upheld, and where the lines separating the divine and the mortal are carefully drawn. Every level has its own surprises and perils, and as one moves up from the first to the 10th heaven, the revelations become more profound and reveal things that regular people are not ready to understand. A vision of creation that goes well beyond the descriptions most Western Bible readers are accustomed to is provided by this multi-layered structure. Due to the customs and decisions of early translators and church authorities, these multiple heavens are not described in detail in the Western canon. Though they mention Enoch and allude to divine mysteries, Genesis and other canonical texts only offer hints of what is out there. The Ethiopian Bible, which preserves these writings in their entirety, is the main source of the complex 10-heaven framework. By demonstrating how creation is subject to divine laws, how celestial beings function within particular domains, and how secret knowledge is both protected and made public, this preservation has given academics and believers a more comprehensive understanding of the cosmos. The fact that these details are missing from the Western Bible does not lessen their importance. Rather, it implies that sacred knowledge was transmitted selectively, with some truths being kept for those who were deemed ready to understand them. Within the larger scheme of things, each of the 10 heavens has a distinct purpose. The movement of the stars, the control of the weather, and the supervision of life on earth are among the more concrete facets of creation that are handled in the lower heavens. Angels keep an eye on human behavior in these realms, to make sure that divine values are respected and the natural order is maintained. Higher heavens, on the other hand, have more ethereal and breathtaking components, such as places where divine judgment is carried out, where cosmic secrets are preserved, and where creatures that defy the imagination reside. Only those who are spiritually ready and have received God's approval are sadhu. Permitted to see some of these truths, the reader is compelled to reflect on the scope and profundity of what is beyond human perception as a result of the tension and awe these forbidden visions bring to the story. According to these layers, angels have duties and powers. Some serve as messengers, facilitating communication between the divine and the mortal. Others are guardians, making sure that the laws of heaven are obeyed. Angels serve as record keepers in some heavens, keeping track of human behavior and preserving the moral equilibrium of the universe. These entities are portrayed as intentional agents with specific responsibilities, operating in a hierarchy that mirrors the painstaking nature of divine governance rather than as ethereal abstractions. The reader is prompted to reconsider the scope of existence and the forces that shape it by Enoch's observations of them, which demonstrate both the vast complexity and the orderliness of creation. The idea that creation is more than just a material or physical reality is further supported by the concept of multiple heavens. Every heaven symbolizes a place where cosmic, spiritual, and moral laws come together, as well as a place of being and understanding. Enoch sees the results of disobedience, glimpses of divine judgment, and punishments for rebellion in some of these levels. In others, he perceives paradisiacal areas that exhibit divine beauty, harmony, and order. As a reflection of the continuing relationship between God, angels, and humans, the text makes it abundantly evident that these realms are dynamic, active, and living. By showing how deeds in the earthly world have an impact on higher planes of existence, this portrayal encourages contemplation of the moral aspects of creation. Suspense and awe are increased by forbidden visions, a recurrent theme in the heavens. Enoch is given permission to see things that regular people could not. Giants whose existence is incomprehensible, angels imprisoned for their sins, and the systems of cosmic judgment that demonstrate the extent of divine power. These taboo revelations are intended to teach rather than to frighten, showing that knowledge comes with responsibility and that humility, respect, and readiness are necessary to comprehend the cosmos. As Enoch rises, the tension between the revealed and the hidden builds suspense, readying him and the audience for the more astounding revelations that follow. Additionally, the text highlights how the heavens are not separate realms, but rather form a continuous spiritual and moral framework. The intricacy of divine order is demonstrated by the way events in one heaven can have an impact on others. Humans, angels, and other creatures all have roles to play in this enormous system, and their deeds have an impact that extends beyond their immediate environment. A central idea in the story is brought to light by this interconnectedness, that creation is a cohesive whole that is governed by justice and wisdom, and that the pursuit of knowledge or moral integrity must always be restrained by an understanding of one's role in the larger scheme of things. Enoch's passage through these worlds is presented as a spiritual and literal ascent. He is interacting with layers of existence that challenge comprehension, faith, and perseverance rather than just traveling through spaces. By progressively revealing the characteristics of each heaven and highlighting the unknown as well as the remarkable creatures and phenomena that call them home, the story creates tension. The human desire to investigate and comprehend mysteries beyond immediate perception is reflected in the anticipation of what lies above each level. As Enoch faces the bounds, dairies of knowledge and the immensity of divine creation, readers and viewers are captivated into a rhythm of exploration and introspection. The Ethiopian Book of Enoch pushes the well-known limits of biblical cosmology by presenting the idea of 10 heavens. The universe is shown to be alive with purpose, inhabited by well-organized angelic hierarchies and subject to laws that are far beyond the realm of human perception. The story shows that seeking knowledge is inextricably linked to being spiritually prepared, highlighting the fact that seeing the truths of creation calls for more than just curiosity. It also calls for moral and ethical integrity, humility, and a reverent awareness of the divine. The audience is prepared for the extraordinary events and creatures that Enoch will soon encounter as he ascends through the heavens, and his journey promises revelations that are both awe-inspiring and cautionary, hinting at wonders that shouldn't exist, but do. A world that was both familiar and astounding was revealed to Enoch upon his ascent into the first heaven. When he first looked at it, it looked like the sky he had always known, vast, limitless, and alive with motion. But as he looked more closely, he saw that every cloud, every wind gust, and every change in the sun was perfectly timed by God. This was no typical atmosphere. It was a world where angels, invisible to the human eye, controlled weather patterns and preserved the harmony of the seasons. Enoch could see cloud formations as he traveled across this area. They shimmered with a golden black color, as though they were illuminated by light, but also veiled by mystery. Lightning flashed not in vain, but as signals with a purpose, lighting the ordered courses of these angels as they went about their tasks. The heavens were alive, not in disorder, but in a rhythm set by angels who played crucial and exact roles. Despite their low status in the heavenly hierarchy, these angels had power over the natural forces. Some controlled the winds, causing breezes to blow across the land, carrying seeds, aromas, and hints of the divine plan. Others regulated rainfall so that crops and rivers flourished in accordance with the cosmic order. Enoch noted that these celestial stewards controlled the interaction of the sun and clouds, the soft mist across a valley, and the unexpected storm that shook the trees. It was an orchestration of power and beauty, a demonstration of how even the most commonplace aspects of earthly life were governed by divine decree. Witnessing this was both humbling and awe-inspiring because it showed a universe that was meticulously maintained by intelligence that was beyond human comprehension. Enoch started to observe how these creatures were organized as he moved through this heaven. Their movements were coordinated as if they were adhering to a sophisticated code that maintained harmony throughout the atmosphere. Golden reflections danced across the darkened skies as some angels appeared to be carrying instruments of light. Others guided clouds along preset routes with their hands or wings. Rainfall fell in patterns that nourished the soil and preserved the season's equilibrium rather than in random. Every action and component had a purpose, showing that even the tiniest natural forces were being watched over and used carefully and intentionally. With each passing moment, Enoch's consciousness expanded, coming to understand that the first heaven was a window into the ordered nature of divine supervision, where beauty and order were inextricably linked. This realm was a stunning visual spectacle. In a controlled display of power, lightning arcs sliced through the darkness as storms rolled across skies that glistened in gold and black. Intricate patterns were created by the clouds, which moved like living tapestries, each movement signifying the efforts of angels to keep the world below in balance. Through gaps, sunlight streamed in ethereal rays that illuminated every corner of the heavens. Enoch felt the palpable presence of vitality, authority, and purpose in every element he saw, despite the gold-and-black contrast creating an almost unreal cinematic panorama. Here, the commonplace, the wind, the rain, the storms, were transformed into a holy spectacle, serving as a continual reminder of the invisible forces at work in the universe. Some of the numerous angels in attendance were tasked with delicate and subtle duties. A single drop of rain could reach a parched root and nourish life without being seen, while a soft breeze could be sent to soothe a tired traveler. Enoch was astounded by how even the smallest deeds had meaning and how the seemingly insignificant motions of water and air were a part of a larger scheme. Even a thunderstorm's violent energy was controlled and guided, never going beyond the bounds established by divine law. With its small angels and natural occurrences, this first heaven demonstrated that God's rule permeated every part of creation, regardless of how banal it might seem to the naked eye. Enoch knew that these particulars laid the groundwork for the higher, more spectacular heavens, where the depth and breadth of divine order would grow. Enoch kept moving, feeling the layers of the heavens beyond the first. Even though this realm was remarkably well organized and beautiful, he believed that his journey was just getting started. Beyond controlling clouds and winds, the higher heavens offered challenges and wonders. The first heaven was an introduction, a threshold that readied him for meetings with more powerful entities, worlds of wisdom and judgment, and visions that were beyond the realm of human comprehension. Every wind gust, lightning strike, and delicate cloud movement alluded to a greater plan, implying that what he was about to see in the upper heavens would be unimaginable, but still based on the painstaking wisdom. The entire atmosphere, golden black clouds swirled about them, seemingly reflecting the energy of lightning-illuminated angels moving with suns, and the divine power that ruled this world left a faint electric charge in the air. Before the ascension to higher realms could begin, Enoch understood that these angels were not acting independently, but rather as a part of a cosmic coordination network that made sure the first heaven performed its function flawlessly. Even the forces of nature were inseparable from the moral and spiritual framework that God had established, as demonstrated by the way that light and shadow, motion and stillness interacted to reflect the harmony of mercy and judgment that would define the heavens above. As Enoch saw how these angels affected the world below, his viewpoint changed. Every element under control had a real impact on human existence, influencing agriculture, defining seasons, and changing people's day-to-day lives. He started to realize that these small angels, who are frequently disregarded, were essential to the maintenance of creation because they served as the initial line of protection between the divine order and humanity. Their work, which was exact, methodical, and fundamental, revealed a heaven that was not remote or abstract, but rather closely related to how life itself operated. Every wind that carried seeds and fragrances, every cloud that floated across the golden black sky, served as a reminder that even the tiniest deeds of obedience and concern in the heavens had great meaning. There was a sense of suspense in the first heaven, despite its magnificent display. Enoch sensed that the heavens that followed would be much more remarkable, potent, and illuminating. A vast and accurate cosmic system was introduced through the systematic manipulation of atmospheric elements, the visible hierarchy of angels, and the cinematic display of storms and light. Knowing that the first heaven, while magnificent, was merely the beginning of a journey that would unveil the actual scope, might, and complexity of creation, Enoch's mind prepared for what he was about to see. The air became heavier as Enoch rose from the first heaven, tense in a way he had never experienced before. Angels had silently and precisely controlled the winds and clouds in the first heaven, which had been a place of order and subdued beauty. However, the second heaven showed a very different reality, one in which rebellion and disobedience had absolute and terrifying repercussions. Here, Enoch saw a prison that was unlike any he had ever seen on earth, a place where fallen angels, those who had disobeyed God's will, were imprisoned. He felt a chill when he first saw this realm. It was a place filled with grief and anger, a testament to the gravity of defying divine authority. In addition to being confined, the angels in this prison were suspended in a state of agony that reflected the seriousness of their decisions. Some were shackled in interwoven chains of light and darkness, fighting in vain against forces that were far stronger than they were. Others were hurled into abysses where darkness and fire met, their wailing cries resonating through the heavens' walls. Every punishment was precise, well considered, and commensurate with the seriousness of their offenses. It was not anarchy without meaning. Enoch saw how divine justice was clearly influencing the world and making sure that every act of disobedience had a just punishment. He was acutely aware of the price of disobeying God because he could almost feel the strain of their suffering pressing against him. Enoch started to comprehend the moral and emotional aspects of this punishment as he watched. In the past, these angels were incredibly powerful and light beings who could have a significant impact and serve God. They were in a state of suspended agony, though, because their decisions had brought them into disobedience, corruption, and pride. Enoch and we were reminded of the repercussions of sin and moral failure by the scene's eerie resonance. Envy, greed, arrogance, and rebellion were not abstract concepts here. Rather, they were concrete, causing genuine suffering in ways that were impossible to overlook. It was a powerful reflection of human experiences, magnified onto a cosmic scale. Enoch experienced a mixture of fear and empathy as he realized that the moral lessons contained in this vision were intended to resonate deeply with any viewer. The second heaven's visual horrors were intense and unrelenting. Streaks of golden black light cast shadows over the scene, while bursts of fire illuminated the writhing bodies of the fallen angels. As a reflection of the warping of their once pure natures, some had wings that were twisted into impossible shapes. Others struggled against chains that appeared to be pulsing with divine energy, while suspended in pools of luminous darkness. The air itself seemed alive, laden with a sense of inevitable fate and judgment, containing cries of defiance and murmurs of regret that blended together like a sinister symphony. The scene's beauty and terror overpowered Enoch's senses, creating a stark contrast that made the heavens seem incredibly real, immediate, and morally significant. There was order and structure even in this horror. The fact that each fallen angel's punishment matched the type of their transgression showed it was precise rather than capricious. Their imprisonment was a reflection of the seriousness of their attempts to improperly influence humanity by disclosing knowledge that was prohibited. Others had struggled against creation's natural order, their chains reflecting the upheaval they inflicted. Enoch observed that the penalties were symbolic as well as physical, signifying the spiritual decay that had brought about their demise. He gained a profound understanding from the ethical and cosmic logic of this system. In the universe of the heavens, decisions, actions, and intentions are inextricably linked to consequences, whether they occur among humans or in the celestial realm. Enoch was also made aware of a disturbing fact in the second heaven. The scope of divine justice is much larger than what is typically thought of. He caught glimmers of the complex systems of accountability that controlled the heavens by watching the fallen angels. In order to illustrate the harmony between mercy and judgment, authority and rebellion, each being was not subjected to punishment in isolation, but rather was part of a cosmic oversight network. Above them, the angelic hierarchy remained vigilant, making sure that God's commands were carried out precisely. The idea that wrongdoing, no matter how covert or subtle, has consequences that reverberate throughout the larger fabric of existence was reflected in this interconnection. Enoch realized that these cosmic truths reflected moral realities on earth, which filled him with both awe and a faint sense of fear. Enoch observed the emotional texture of the fallen angels' suffering amid the terrifying sights. It was a mixture of regret, defiance, and despair, not just agony. Others clung obstinately to rebellion, their voices sharp and defiant, while others whispered regrets that reverberated throughout the prison like faint melodies. There was a noticeable tension in the air, as though the moral ramifications themselves were heavy and dense. Seeing this, Enoch realized that moral consciousness and justice in the heavens were inextricably linked. The punishment served as both a corrective and an example, intended to show the gravity of decision-making and the weighty responsibility that comes with freedom. It was impossible to avoid the human parallels. Enoch considered how pride, jealousy, and disobedience appear in mortal lives as he gazed down at the angels who were imprisoned. Although the struggle of the fallen angels was heightened, it reflected the internal conflicts that people deal with on a daily basis, the temptation to act selfishly, to transgress moral limits, or to disregard advice that is consistent with a higher order. Enoch's fear and empathy coexisted with a deep understanding that moral awareness was necessary and not optional. The second heaven turned into a mirror, demonstrating how divine law applies to everything from human choices to cosmic acts of disobedience, and how rebellion has both immediate and long-lasting effects. The intensity of the second heaven's visuals was cinematic. The angels' agonized forms were framed by golden black skies, with chains pulsing with energy, shadowed pits blazing with fire, and ethereal light illuminating the geometric order of their imprisonment. With wind, shadow, and sporadic lightning strikes reflecting both the wrath and order of divine law, the natural world appeared to take part in the punishment. When Enoch realized that what he had seen was merely a piece of a reality too big and complicated for everyday comprehension, his mind found it difficult to fully process. It was impossible to ignore, solidifying the experience as a revelation that would permanently alter his perception of the heavens. Enoch felt that each new heaven would bring a more remarkable reality as he readied himself to ascend even higher. The journey promised even greater revelations, places where divine knowledge, judgment, and cosmic phenomena intertwined in ways that were beyond imagination. The first heaven had brought order and beauty, the second, justice and consequence. He was reminded that the heavens were places where moral and spiritual laws were precisely enforced, not just places of wonder by the somber threshold of the prison of fallen angels. Every cry, every chain, and every flash of light prepared Enoch for the heavenly wonders and deep mysteries that were to come, by acting as a warning and a source of insight. The air changed as Enoch ascended into the third heaven, bringing with it a sense of quiet weightiness and deep serenity. The first heaven, driven by storms, and the second, like a prison, were very different from this realm. In front of him, paradise materialized, a scene that appeared both familiar and exaggerated, beyond human understanding. The garden was bathed in ethereal tones as radiant light softened the golden black hues of the skies and caressed everything it touched. Trees soared, glistened with dew that seemed to be infused with divine essence. The aroma of life in its purest form, a heady mix of beauty and vitality, permeated the air. The righteous lived here, rewarded for their loyalty, obedience, and alignment with God's will. However, it was impossible to overlook the contrast with the punishment zones. Even within this paradise. Beyond the verdant garden, Enoch could see places where the light faded and shadows hung strangely. These were places set aside for the wicked, where decisions made in violation of divine law had permanently altered the soul. There were areas where troubled souls roamed, unable to ascend into higher planes, their faces displaying sorrow and regret. Some appeared to be caught in a transitional state where the effects of their deeds were evidently painful. The moral stakes were made abundantly evident by this duality, which coexisted in the same heaven. Paradise was a reward, but not a guarantee, and the shadowed areas were a warning of what might result from disobedience and rebellion. Enoch recognized the moral structure woven into this heavenly world and watched both with awe and reflection. In this heaven, the righteous walked with elegance, their faces glowing and free of burdens. Soft tones reverberated throughout the garden as some performed acts of service and praise. Angels cared for them, protecting and guiding them so that their tranquility would not be disturbed. Even the tiniest acts of obedience and devotion were recognized here, Enoch observed, magnified in the clarity of divine justice. The fact that each being's reward mirrored their earthly existence showed how accurate, personal, and extensive divine recognition is. He saw the environment itself embrace those who had lived with humility and compassion. The garden seemed to react to their presence, the light glimmering brighter, the flowers gently slanting toward them, the air bearing an almost palpable sense of contentment. Enoch was astounded by the scene's vividness, which made the reward principle tangible and emotionally compelling. The wicked regions, on the other hand, demonstrated the complex justice of God. Pride or envy were now encircled by shadows that reflected the distorted results of their decisions. As a metaphor for the weights they bore in life, some were imprisoned beneath the roots of enormous, twisted trees, their movements impeded. Others hovered around pools of faint light, symbolizing the spiritual famine brought on by moral failure, unable to drink from the waters that fed the righteous. The environment itself appeared to respond to each being's energy and intent, enforcing the consequences. The air was filled with murmurs of sorrow, carried by currents that made the garden's wind feel heavier in these areas. Enoch experienced the emotional impact of this punishment even though he was far away. It served as a reminder that divine order function is not only through rewards, but also through the appropriate use of punishment. Angels were essential in preserving the harmony between judgment and paradise. While some oversaw the containment and rectification of the wicked, making sure that justice was exact, equitable, and proportionate, others led the righteous, providing support, instruction, and protection. In addition to carrying out commands, Enoch came to understand that these celestial beings embodied the cosmic and moral laws that governed the heavens, acting as extensions of divine wisdom. Their presence brought to light the interdependence of all decisions and actions, showing that no action, sinful or good, occurs in a vacuum. Every choice and every intention had an impact on the world, forming heaven's atmosphere and strengthening the moral order that Enoch now saw in all its beauty. There was also a startling visual paradox. Light and shadow coexisted to make both worlds visible. Every component of the garden and every area of punishment could be clearly seen against the golden black sky. While the shadows surrounding the wicked were tinted with muted, almost metallic darkness, the trees and flowers in paradise glowed with warmth, creating a surreal contrast that made moral truths obvious. This visual narrative was just as potent as the moral lesson. Choices determine fates, deeds have repercussions, and divine order carefully balances reward and justice. Enoch was compelled to consider the innumerable human lives impacted by invisible forces, comparing these heavenly patterns to Earth's moral structure. Enoch discovered that lessons were woven into the landscape even within the garden as he continued to explore. Some roads appeared to be accessible to those who were humble, while others needed to be walked with effort and reflection. The righteous were led by streams of light to higher viewpoints where they could see the majesty of the heavens in all their splendor. The atmosphere hummed with silent wisdom, as though the surroundings were speaking to those who were sensitive to heavenly direction. This heaven was more than just a place of reward. It was a living example of the idea that doing what God says uplifts the faithful's spirit and the very world around them. Each person's decisions influenced not only their internal condition, but also the harmony of the heaven they lived in. The lessons were just as real in the judgment zones. The environment, a continual reminder of the moral standards they had transgressed, was a visible manifestation of the consequences of the actions of fallen beings and those who had chosen the path of sin. Some found it difficult to get to areas with light, which served as a reminder to Enoch that repentance is possible but demands effort and acknowledgement. Others were trapped, demonstrating that even the heavens respect the barriers created by persistent rebellion. Therefore, the third heaven was a place of moral transparency, where every decision, action, and thought had immediate, visible consequences, and where the contrasts between reward and punishment, virtue and sin, were vividly depicted in ways that words could never express. Angels led Enoch through it all, assisting him in navigating the differences between the areas of punishment and paradise. Realizing that he was seeing not just a physical area, but also a moral and spiritual ecosystem, he felt the weight of observation. The idea that decisions have consequences and that divine justice and mercy work in perfect harmony was emphasized by every little detail, including the light and shadow, the sound of flowing water, and the whispers of the punished. The third heaven prepared Enoch for the even more profound revelations that lay ahead in the higher heavens above by Seu, serving as a hands-on lesson in the balance of life and a place where morality, reward, and judgment came together in concrete, memorable ways. The landscape changed dramatically as Enoch rose from the third heaven. A vast cosmic panorama stretched out from the golden black skies, with celestial bodies moving with a grace and accuracy that was beyond human understanding. The universe's very fabric became visible here in the fourth heaven as a living, breathing system that was controlled by angels tasked with keeping the sun, moon, and stars in good condition. Enoch's eyes were instantly drawn to the sun, which was not just a plain ball of light like the one on Earth, but a glowing object whose brightness pulsed in time with the motions of the nearby planets and stars. Golden black shadows softened the sun's radiance, producing an image that appeared both alive and well-organized, as though it were breathing in time with the divine design. Angels had a specific role to play in the coordination of cosmic order, and they moved through this world with purpose. Some controlled planet orbits, making sure that every celestial body traveled along its intended course without deviating. Others governed the moon's phases, causing its silvery radiance to wax and wane in perfect harmony with the cycles of time and life on Earth. Light streamed through the heavens in streams that appeared to have been choreographed by a wisdom beyond mortal comprehension, while stars blazed in patterns that mirrored divine symmetry. Enoch came to understand that every motion was deliberate and that every orbit demonstrated accuracy and balance. The angel's labor preserved the equilibrium that supported the world below as well as the heavens, so nothing here was random. This heaven had an astounding golden highlights traced the movements of planets and moons, while streams of starlight created radiant highways across the blackened sky. Iridescent glows were cast on the wings of passing angels as nebulas glistened like celesti. Jewels, their colors changing in ways that defied earthly pigment. Energy vibrated through the atmosphere itself, a faint resonance that suggested the fundamental principles that held the universe together. Enoch saw meteor streams and comets traveling on precise paths, their flaming tails illuminating the universe's divine choreography. A degree of cosmic order that outstripped all human creativity and imagination was revealed as ever precision. Some of the angels seemed to be carrying devices that looked like rods, compasses, or glowing spheres, which they used to guide and track the motions of the stars. Others moved silently and gracefully, their presence alone keeping things in balance in subtle but noticeable ways. Enoch observed that these watchful creatures promptly fixed even the smallest disruptions, such as a comet deviating from its course or a small star flickering. Each angel appeared to be aware of the great responsibility that lay upon them, and the harmony of the universe depended on their attentiveness. As Enoch came to understand that the universe's workings were not just physical, but also moral and spiritual, reflecting divine intent in each orbit and rotation, his sense of wonder grew. Enoch's understanding of the complex interdependence of all celestial objects grew as he kept watching. In addition to providing light, the sun's rays affected the cycles of life on Earth, ocean tides, and planet rotation. The moon's phases had an impact on more than just nights and tides. They were a component of a cosmic equilibrium that preserved harmony between the sky and the earth. Instead of being far-off spots of light, stars served as indicators and guides for invisible celestial currents, and the angels carefully maintained their positions. Each component was interrelated, and Enoch perceived a deep intelligence interlacing these systems. It served as a reminder that, despite its immense size, the universe operated with a precise order that reflected the wisdom of God. This heaven's heavenly machinery was not only useful, but also exquisitely beautiful. Enoch observed as planets briefly aligned in almost ceremonial formations, their brilliance accentuated by the golden black sky. Luminous arcs and loops resembled elaborate tapestries spun in space itself as streams of starlight curved gracefully and crossed one another without colliding. Angels moved in fluid synchronization with meteors, guiding their trajectories and leaving behind brief trails of brilliance that resembled messages or symbols written in fire. Enoch came to understand that this show was more than just a sight. It was a manifestation of divine order and a live illustration of how the universe functions under the watchful eye of God's representatives. The angels' work involved ongoing judgment and correction, going beyond simple upkeep. Enoch saw a star that had started to sway a little in its path, being gently pushed back by a celestial entity, its light settling back into a straight line. Under the guidance of wings that glistened with golden-black luminescence, invisible forces realigned a moon that was a little out of its orbit. Each modification was subtle but accurate, exhibiting a cosmic carelessness that is incomprehensible to the human mind. Enoch realized that the fourth heaven served as an example of the idea that balance and order in the universe are maintained by conscious attention, discernment, and alertness, rather than by accident. These traits are also present in the ethical and spiritual spheres of life on Earth. Additionally, Enoch observed instances in which the celestial bodies interacted in symbolic ways, forming patterns that represented tension or harmony. While the sun's light reflected through far-off cosmic dust to light the wings of angels watching over this area, a star cluster would line up with a planetary orbit, illuminating neighboring nebula. These exchanges were meaningful, a deliberate and artistic expression of divine intent. They were not arbitrary. Enoch came to see that even the universe's beauty was a language of meaning, teaching lessons about responsibility, balance, and the interdependence of all things. Vision and understanding were enlarged beyond human capacity in this heaven, providing a view of the boundless intelligence that underlies all motion, light, and shadow in the cosmos. Enoch realized the seriousness of what he had seen as he readied himself to ascend to the next heaven. The fourth heaven was a place where knowledge, accuracy, and creativity came together, where angels made sure the sun, moon, and stars moved perfectly, and where the workings of creation were made visible in both form and function. A reminder of God's concern and the harmony that underpins all life, the cosmic order was magnificent. In preparation for the even more intricate and enigmatic worlds that lay above, the heavens where light, power, and revelation would manifest in their most spectacular forms, Enoch's heart was filled with wonder, and his comprehension of divine orchestration grew. The dazzling cosmic choreography of the fourth heaven progressively faded away as Enoch ascended, to be replaced by a more subdued but profoundly profound realm. In contrast to the earlier heavens of obvious activity and grandeur, this one was the fifth. Here, Enoch saw angels moving slowly, some of them seemingly hovering in mid-air, their wings unfolding and folding in silent contemplation. These beings appeared to exist in a state of liminality, neither fully active in active creation nor completely dormant, in contrast to the busy diligence of angels in the lower heavens, or the orderly orchestration of celestial bodies in the fourth. The area was surrounded by a peaceful isolation, which stood in stark contrast to the lively vitality of the sky below. Enoch felt that these angels were in contemplation, some floating near spheres of light that seemed to throb with contemplative energy, others wandering aimlessly through corridors of golden black mist. A profound spiritual truth was made clear by the fifth heaven. Not everyone who lives in the divine realms is constantly active. Some people live in contemplation and waiting, their purpose paused but important. Enoch saw angels that seemed to be troubled by memories, hovering around the boundaries of their realm, as if they were contemplating choices, both their own and those they had seen made by humanity. Every motion, every silent gesture had weight. Even the silence itself seemed deliberate. Reflection, moral analysis, and emotional processing dominated this heaven, highlighting the fact that even celestial beings are responsible and susceptible to self-examination. Enoch's own human experiences, pauses, self-doubt, and moral reckoning that mold the soul and its journey were reflected in the limbo-like atmosphere. Enoch observed facial expressions among these itinerant angels that reflected human hardships. Some looked sad, as if their glowing faces were marked with regret. Others exuded subdued optimism, implying that introspection might result in fresh insight or atonement. It was a place where moral and emotional awareness was developed, a prelude to bigger responsibilities in the higher heavens, rather than a place of punishment or reward. This realm's golden black light was softer, more subdued than that below, but it still brought out the smallest details: the delicate glimmer of wings, the soft ripple of robes as angels floated through space, and the complex patterns of light that appeared to symbolize intention or thought. Enoch recognized that these visual cues represented the inner workings of morality, divine alignment, and consciousness, and were more than just ornamental. Enoch proceeded into the sixth heaven, a place of extreme concentration and careful attention to detail. Here, angels were tasked with keeping a record of all human behavior, including acts of obedience, kindness, transgression, and cruelty. Enormous crystal tablets with glowing inscriptions that glowed in a golden black light drifted through the air. Angels moved between them carefully and purposefully, making sure the records were accurate and comprehensive. The enormity of this duty struck Enoch. Every human deed, no matter how small, had a reverberation in these heavenly archives. As a reminder that the universe itself watches, considers, and maintains the moral results of every life, the sixth heaven demonstrated the unbreakable bond between divine awareness and human free will. In this world, the angels actively engaged with the flow of creation rather than acting as passive scribes. They documented human behavior while also keeping an eye on the laws of life, the harmony of the natural world, and the results of both mortal and divine deeds. To maintain the alignment of natural and moral laws, some angels appeared to adjust luminous threads that linked human actions to cosmic outcomes. Enoch noticed the fine accuracy with which they operated. One transgression could have a cascading effect on the threads, affecting events and fates, but the system was set up to re-establish equilibrium wherever it was upset. The idea that human free will exists within a framework of cosmic accountability, and that the divine acts with both justice and foresight, was highlighted by the sixth heaven. The sixth heaven was overwhelming on an emotional level. Enoch felt the weight of human history pressed against his consciousness in the form of pulsating threads and glowing inscriptions. Realizing that every choice made on earth, every act of kindness or cruelty, it was preserved with divine care, filled him with both awe and humility. Even though the angels themselves exuded a calm intensity, unwavering and focused, Enoch could sense the moral awareness and empathy ingrained in their work. Occasionally, some stopped to consider especially noteworthy actions, their wings quivering a little as they saw the enormous influence of one life on the larger fabric of creation. This was a place that connected the divine and the human by closely examining each decision and its effects. It was a heaven where moral, spiritual, and emotional significance came together. Their spiritual teachings were strengthened by the visual experience of these heavens. The fifth featured wandering angels surrounded by golden black mists that evoked a sense of peaceful contemplation, points of concentration, contemplation, or undetermined intention were indicated by floating lights and softly glowing spheres that punctuated the transitional area. In the sixth, the intricate movements of angels, threads of light, and glowing crystal tablets created a web of visual harmony that alluded to the order underlying all human history. Enoch was reminded of the cosmic significance of even seemingly trivial decisions when he observed that light itself appeared to react to moral weight. Good deeds shimmered brightly, while evil deeds cast shadows across the threads. Deeply interwoven with the spiritual and emotional experience of the heavens, every sight, movement, and interaction taught lessons of accountability, alertness, and moral awareness. Enoch began to understand the difference between human existence and divine supervision. He learned the value of introspection, self-analysis, and patience from the fifth heaven, which also made clear that even light beings need to take time to think, assess, and refocus. The sixth focused on accountability by demonstrating how each action is documented, preserved, and evaluated in light of divine law. When combined, these domains demonstrated a striking symmetry. Cosmic balance depends on introspection and accountability. Enoch realized that the hard-working angels of these higher planes meticulously observe, document, and incorporate into a broader moral and spiritual framework what humans frequently take for granted on Earth. Enoch's heart and mind were already taking in the lessons from the fifth and sixth heavens as he readied himself to ascend to the seventh. He was reminded by the itinerant angels that knowledge and development can occur even in silence. The angels documenting human actions showed that no decision is overlooked and that moral and spiritual ramifications extend well beyond the realm of the immediate observer. Enoch was prepared for the even more amazing and enlightening realities that awaited him above, where divine authority and the most profound mysteries of creation would unfold in ways that were beyond his wildest dreams, by the combination of introspection, observation, and cosmic oversight. A significant change in atmosphere surrounded Enoch as he rose above the painstaking documentation of the sixth heaven. The seventh heaven appeared as a realm suspended in luminous reverence, where the divine appeared almost palpable. Light that came from the very essence of holiness itself, rather than from any star or sun, pierced the golden black skies, which deepened into a radiant tapestry. Enoch saw the powerful cherubim and seraphim here, nearest to God, beings of great strength and brightness, whose wings swept across the heavens like glistening veils of fire and darkness. Each of their precise yet flowing motions expressed devotion, awe, and obedience. Enoch was overcome by the intensity of their presence, but he also felt a sense of purpose, a realization that this world was the highest level of divine connection, where the purest manifestations of love, judgment, and worship all coexisted harmoniously. Enoch had never seen angels like the cherubim and seraphim in the lower heavens. Their multi-layered, magnificent forms were embellished with patterns of light and glowing eyes that conveyed authority and wisdom. Instead of using words to communicate with the soul, they seemed to emit an energy that was beyond words. Enoch felt that these creatures were there to represent divine values, justice, mercy, and unwavering devotion to God's will, rather than just to serve. Some hovered close to thrones carved of glowing energy, where the light appeared to beat in time with the universe's own heartbeat. Others woven geometries that alluded to the sacred architecture of creation, circling in patterns that defied human logic. Enoch felt both insignificant and closely linked to the divine plan, because every detail, the flutter of wings, the hum of celestial resonance, the shimmering light, conveyed holiness so overwhelming. Enoch could feel the eighth heaven extending in all directions from this position, its secrets hidden but alluded to by glimmers of bright constellations and cosmic energy streams. The eighth heaven, which was inhabited by angels who protected universal secrets, seemed less organized than the seventh, more dynamic and mysterious. These guardians moved between constellations, carefully tracing their forms, regulating the cosmic energy flow. and making sure that the creation patterns were maintained. Here, stars and galaxies were more than just celestial bodies. They were stores of wisdom and divine laws, with each light pulse serving as a record of the secret workings of creation. The angels themselves were bright, but not quite as bright as the cherubim and seraphim of the seventh heaven, their brightness subdued by the concentration needed to keep these holy secrets intact. Enoch watched as a few angels followed the paths of far-off constellations, their hands navigating streams of light that linked stars to cosmic laws. Others appeared to write symbols in the air, complex glyphs of energy that expressed the laws of creation, the passage of time, and the interdependence of all dimensions of existence. Although these visual displays were breathtaking, their purpose was just as important as their aesthetic appeal. Every movement guaranteed the coherence of the universe, the preservation of interdimensional equilibrium, and the safeguarding of creation secrets. The eighth heaven demonstrated that divine order continued to exist outside of the visible universe, supervised by entities whose sole purpose in life was to maintain the integrity of creation. The visual contrast of light and shadow emphasized the holiness of these heavens. The radiance of holiness was absolute in the seventh heaven, permeating every surface, a blinding and consoling brilliance. The eighth highlighted the relationship between mystery and revelation by using the golden black skies as a background for constellations and cosmic threads that glowed subtly. Enoch came to understand that the heavens themselves conveyed moral and spiritual truths. Being near God brought clarity and understanding, but being a guardian of hidden knowledge required responsibility, wisdom, and vigilance. Beauty, awe, and sacred duty were all interwoven in this multi-layered experience of visual and spiritual cues. Enoch's emotional reaction was nuanced. He was awed by the divine's closeness, terrified by the holiness's intensity, and profoundly humbled by creatures that existed only to uphold moral and cosmic order. However, he was also inspired by the seventh and eighth heavens, which showed that purpose, clarity, and understanding are brought about by alignment with divine principles. Enoch felt that knowledge itself carries responsibility after seeing the angels of the eighth heaven protecting constellations and universal secrets. The mysteries of creation are not arbitrary or concealed for protection. Rather, they are guarded and preserved by entities whose attention guarantees the stability and continuity of all existence. He was profoundly affected by this insight, which reaffirmed the connection between divine law, cosmic order, and morality. The angel's presence served a symbolic as well as practical purpose. Enoch was reminded by the seraphim and cherubim of the seventh heaven that holiness is inextricably linked to obedience, reverence, and alignment with God's will. They also symbolized the close relationship between divine authority and worship. The eighth heaven's guardians represented the value of accountability, self-control, and prudent knowledge management. The two heavens' contrast demonstrated the evolution of divine closeness and intent. One is a place of direct worship and presence, while the other and cosmic supervision. Together, they depicted a comprehensive image of celestial order in which vigilance, wisdom, and holiness are interconnected and necessary to maintain the heavens and the earth below. Enoch took note of the spiritual and emotional energy that pervaded the room. With its cherubim and seraphim moving with grace and accuracy, the seventh heaven exuded warmth, devotion, and purity. The eighth heaven radiated concentrated intensity, a subdued energy that required discipline and attention. These worlds were visually connected by the golden black skies, which emphasized that despite their differences, both heavens had the same function, bringing divine order to life, protecting creation, and fostering spiritual knowledge. As an example of how sacredness and cosmic harmony are inextricably linked to moral and spiritual integrity, Enoch felt that every angel, movement, and celestial alignment contributed to a larger plan that stretched well beyond human perception. Enoch learned about the size, intricacy, and holiness of divine order from his experience in these two heavens. He understood that holiness is dynamic and manifested via duty, devotion, and close supervision. Alignment with God necessitates both awe-inspiring worship and conscientious guardianship of creation's mysteries, as the angels of the seventh and eighth heavens showed. Not only was the visual splendor of wings, thrones, stars, and constellations breathtaking, but it was also a physical manifestation of the laws that govern the cosmos: obedience, watchfulness, wisdom, and sacred responsibility. As Enoch's heart and mind assimilated these teachings, they prepared him for the even more profound revelations of the higher heavens, where divine mysteries would be unveiled with ever-increasing intensity, and the essence of creation itself would become more understandable to the ones selected to see these extraordinary worlds. The air itself seemed to throb with a force he had never experienced as Enoch rose above the eighth heaven. Golden black skies pulsing with light so intense it seemed alive. The ninth heaven spread out before him like a brilliant expanse of pure radiance. God's very presence was evident here, emanating from a central glory that seemed both intimate and overwhelming, a brilliance that Enoch could feel pressing against the boundaries of his awareness. This divine aura was encircled by angels of great majesty and power, their forms glimmering with light that mirrored the glory of God. Despite their deliberate and respectful movements, these creatures' very existence suggested wisdom and power beyond mortal comprehension. Realizing that this was the closest any creation could get to experiencing the entirety of divine essence without being consumed, Enoch experienced both awe and fear. Every beam of light and shadow had significance in the ninth heaven, which was teeming with radiant energy. Around the central glory, Enoch saw angelic thrones, each of which represented a different facet of the divine will. As a sign of unwavering devotion and watchfulness, their wings moved rhythmically as they glistened with the golden black radiance of the heavens. Sound didn't seem to be needed here. Instead, the energy of presence, light pulses and vibrations that spoke directly to the spirit were used for communication. Although there was a strong sense of divine authority, the atmosphere was not oppressive. Rather, it called for humility and an appreciation of the size of creation. Enoch realized that this was a world of mediation, where angels maintained harmony and order on a scale that was unthinkable by interpreting and carrying out God's will throughout the cosmos. Enoch continued on toward the 10th heaven, a realm so great that it eclipsed all previous visions. He was able to see the entire extent of creation as the golden black radiance grew into an almost palpable aura. The throne of God lay here, an unthinkable seat of power, encircled by a whirling horde of glowing creatures, each of whom emitted waves of light that appeared to beat in time with the beat of the divine heart. The throne itself was not material in the sense that we know it. Rather, it was a center of purpose, light, and energy from which all of existence emanated. Aside from the known world, Enoch's vision encompassed the hidden dimensions of creation, including cosmic prisons that housed giants, rebellious angels, hybrid beings, and other entities whose forms were beyond the realms of earthly understanding. Every vision had cosmic, spiritual, and moral meaning, demonstrating that all facets of life, visible and invisible, were governed by God. Enoch saw trends in this world that linked the destinies of both humans and angels. A complex tapestry that explained every choice, every sin, and every act of righteousness was woven together by streams of golden black light that connected actions on earth to Auti, homes in higher realms. As a sobering reminder of the price of rebellion, he saw prisons of darkness containing fallen angels and their hybrid offspring, their forms shifting and immense. Giants and hybrid creatures moved nearby under divine watch, their places in the developing creation plan preserved for reasons Enoch could only partially understand. The enormity of these visions left him speechless, but their arrangement was clear. Each creature, phenomenon, and life's secret had a specific role to play, all of which were intricately interwoven into the universe's larger scheme. In the 10th heaven, angelic beings carried out both ceremonial and practical duties. Some hovered close to the throne, sending divine commands to the lower heavens with eyes that reflected the light of innumerable worlds. Others made their way through the cosmic prisons, making sure that all entities stayed in line with God's plan and that boundaries were maintained. Enoch saw creatures whose glowing wings beat in a rhythm that kept them balanced across enormous dimensions, as if they were studying the motions and interactions of hybrid creatures. Each angel had a specific role to play, but they all had deeper meanings than mere compliance. Serving God was not a daily occurrence in this heaven. Rather, it was a manifestation of knowledge, insight, and a close relationship to the underlying laws of life. The most disturbing and enlightening were probably the forbidden visions that Enoch saw. He saw things that human minds could hardly comprehend. Giants looming over landscapes, hybrid creatures whose shapes fused various facets of creation, and cosmic prisons, where creatures that had disturbed the natural order were imprisoned by divine judgment. Each vision demonstrated the cost of imbalance and disobedience, in addition to the power of creation, carrying a weight of moral and spiritual implications. Enoch, however, saw an underlying harmony in these horrifying scenes, a reminder that God's wisdom and authority contained even the most chaotic or terrifying aspects of the universe. Enoch's heart was pounding as he took in the 10th heaven's immense size and complexity, and he was constantly caught between awe and fear. The energy emanating from the throne of God itself appeared to permeate the entire universe. Outward streams of light extended to the earth, lower heavens, and even far-off dimensions, creating a network of interconnected heavenly supervision. Enoch had the impression that this was the main axis that the entire universe revolved around, not just a place of power. This divine presence was extended by the angels that surrounded the throne, each of whom helped to uphold law and order, document actions, or carry out orders. Their coordinated motions produced a visual symphony of energy, light, and wings that was both spiritual and tangible. Enoch came to see that the 10th heaven embodied the pinnacle of divine wisdom, perfect justice, absolute knowledge, and all-encompassing control over everything. Enoch had never experienced anything like the emotional and spiritual experience he had in the 9th and 10th heavens. He had been exposed to cosmic mysteries and sacred order in the 7th and 8th heavens, but here he was faced with the full extent of God's presence and the mysteries of creation. Enoch nearly shuddered at the sense of awe and humility evoked by the brightness of the light, the size of the creatures, and the intricacy of the cosmic systems. But in the midst of this overwhelming exposure, he also experienced a deep realization. The universe, in all its hidden and visible forms, functioned in accordance with divine law, was tended by creatures of unfathomable strength, and was directed by the throne from which all creation flows. Enoch realized through his vision that the mysteries of the heavens were not random. As reminders of moral consequences, cosmic balance, and God's authority, giants, hybrid beings, and cosmons were all essential components of the divine order. Every decision made by angels and humans alike, every action in the lower realms was watched, noted, and woven into the vast fabric of life. The full range of creation's secrets, power, and authority, a realm that humans could never fathom, was visible, contained, and flawlessly ordered in the 10th heaven, which symbolized the pinnacle of divine revelation. Enoch was equipped to return from his voyage through these highest planes with wisdom and understanding that would push the boundaries of comprehension, evoke wonder, and shed light on the deepest secrets of God's cosmos. Enoch's vision grew to include worlds and realities that mortals were never supposed to see while he lingered in the 10th heaven. The presence of angels, whose job it was to protect the unknown, kept the delicate balance between revelation and prohibition, which seemed to vibrate in the air. Enoch saw creatures with shapes beyond earthly understanding, hybrid beings that blended aspects of animal, human, and divine nature. Their limbs were intertwined with ethereal wings that glistened with golden black light, and some were as tall as giants. Others had many faces, representing both wisdom and the chaos of creation, and eyes that gleamed like molten stars, expressing instinct and intelligence that were beyond human comprehension. These beings were a living reminder that not all of creation was intended for human comprehension or acceptance, existing at the nexus of divine experimentation and celestial rebellion. Enoch saw severe and unforgiving heavenly punishments. Rebellious spirits and fallen angels were imprisoned in energy cages, their bodies writhing but constrained by divine laws. Some were imprisoned beneath floating prisons of glowing chains, hovering over unfathomable depths, unable to communicate with creation or affect the lower world. Their suffering was more than just physical. It had a spiritual resonance and represented the results of disobedience to divine law. Enoch had the impression that the severity of these penalties was precisely calibrated to maintain cosmic balance, while also being severe enough to quell rebellion. These scenes demonstrated the contrast between justice and mercy in God's government. Disobedience is recognized, dealt with, and purposefully restrained, showing that even the most terrifying things are contained within the meticulous plan of creation. Enoch observed that some of the hybrid creatures were neither completely submissive nor completely rebellious. They moved through transitional areas, tethered between worlds, their existence mysterious but essential. These beings served as a living example of the conflict between divine secrecy and human curiosity, serving as reminders that certain types of existence and knowledge are prohibited because humanity is not yet ready to understand or control them. Enoch was moved by their strangeness, beauty, and strength, but he was also slightly uneasy. He understood that if curiosity was followed without wisdom, the excitement of discovery in mortals could quickly turn dangerous. Angels positioned around the prisons and hybrids, the guardians of these realms, emanated a silent authority, an implicit caution that while observation was allowed, meddling was not. These angels' every action emphasized the tension between revelation and restraint that ruled the highest heavens and reaffirmed the sacredness of boundaries. Enoch's eyes went farther, toward worlds that were sealed by divine decree and concealed behind veils of energy and bright light, where the secrets of the cosmos were concealed. The very essence of creation itself seemed to be contained in certain chambers, energies from the formation of galaxies, stars, and even the very beginnings of life on Earth. The vast and absolute knowledge kept here was purposefully kept out of reach, reserved for God's omniscience and the designated guardians. Enoch experienced the weight of these mysteries bearing down on him, a warning that the intensity of what lay beyond could break mortal minds while also attracting him with a sense of fascination. The luminous barriers, angels hovering in constant watchfulness, and the dim glimmer of secrets within suggested truths that, if improperly disclosed, could change perception, upend faith, or even upend the moral order. As Enoch's vision progressed, the lessons for humanity became more and more evident. He believed that divine secrecy served as a safeguard for moral and spiritual integrity rather than being a matter of whimsy. Some visions, some knowledge, and some ways of being were purposefully limited because they could be misused by people who lacked the necessary wisdom. Giants, hybrid creatures, and cosmic prisons were all real-world metaphors. Decisions have repercussions, the unknown entails responsibility, and seeking out knowledge that is forbidden necessitates prudence, humility, and discernment. Enoch had a strong sense of obligation to observe these realities, not to take advantage of them, but to communicate their importance and the limits set by divine law. The conflict between curiosity and self-control struck a deep chord with him. In the lower heavens, knowledge was dispersed based on purpose and function. Humans took action, angels watched, and cosmic laws determined results. However, the stakes were infinitely higher here in the 10th heaven. There was spiritual and emotional weight to every glimpse into the forbidden. Under close observation, Enoch saw hybrid creatures engaging in interactions that suggested both intelligence and chaos. The scenes, which showed the precarious nature of creation when entities exist beyond human comprehension, were both breathtaking and unnerving. Deeply troubling questions were raised by these visions. Why did these creatures exist? For what reason were they contained? And how could humanity pursue knowledge while still honoring divine limits? Even though these forbidden realms were breathtaking, Enoch understood the moral significance of what he was seeing. The angels' attention to detail, the accuracy of their penalties, and the methodical containment of hybrid creatures showed that divine law is not random, but rather intentional, moral, and purposeful. His primary duty became to observe without interfering, to comprehend without possessing, and to witness without passing judgment. Enoch came to understand that the greater the vision, the greater the lesson. The duty to respect God's wisdom, order, and authority is inextricably linked to having access to divine knowledge. Although it is natural, human curiosity needs to be restrained by humility, respect, and an awareness of its limitations. The ultimate paradox was made clear by Enoch's experience with the 10th heaven. Things that are beyond human comprehension are present in the universe and are kept, watched over, and controlled by divine power. Cosmic prisons, hybrids, and sealed secrets were real and unreachable, physical yet purposefully concealed. The message that Enoch was meant to deliver to humanity would be shaped by the tension he experienced between revelation and prohibition, awe and fear, fascination and reverence. These forbidden visions served two purposes. First, they showed mortals the vastness and complexity of creation. Second, they taught them that some truths, no matter how brilliant or terrifying, are protected for a reason. Enoch's heart struggled with the question of how much knowledge is too much, a question mortals will always ask, even as he took in the enormity of what he had witnessed. Which mysteries can be investigated without risk? How can one respond to glimmers of forbidden truths without giving in to pride or fear? The angels themselves demonstrated that ultimate wisdom blends knowledge with moral obligation by embodying the harmony between revelation and restraint while serving as guardians and executors of divine law. Enoch came to understand that this was not just a showy vision, but rather a deep moral code. People are encouraged to look for, learn, and strive, but always with respect, prudence, and an awareness of the holy limits that preserve cosmic balance. Enoch gained an appreciation for the complex, multi-layered design of creation as a result of the forbidden knowledge. Cosmic prisons, giants, and sealed mysteries were not chaos. Rather, they were a part of a divinely orchestrated structure that was beyond human comprehension and in which every element had a specific function. The conflict between secrecy and curiosity highlighted the obligation that comes with seeing the truth. Enoch's experience demonstrated that comprehending the invisible requires integrity, humility, and awe in the face of the universe's immense and sacred design. It is not just an intellectual exercise. Few mortals could ever fully understand the knowledge that Enoch brought back from the heavens, but what he had seen was not merely for wonder, it was full of spiritual and moral lessons for humanity. The images of hybrid creatures, cosmic prisons, and divine government lingered in his mind as he descended, each one carrying a symbolic meaning. God's hierarchy and order were mirrored in the heavens' structure and layering, highlighting the importance of obedience and watchfulness in preserving harmony in both the spiritual and material worlds. Since faithfulness and integrity are never invisible to the divine, Enoch came to understand that every being, every action, and every decision were watched and documented. This insight emphasized a timeless principle. Moral responsibility is universal, and one's deeds have a profound impact on the world, even when they are invisible. Lessons about stewardship and consequences were emphasized by the first and second heavens, which featured atmospheric angels and prisons of rebellion. Enoch was reminded by the angels who controlled the seasons, winds, and storms that life throughout creation is sustained by obedience to divine roles, no matter how small they may seem. On the other hand, the fallen angels in captivity served as a stark reminder of the price of pride and disobedience, as well as the fact that defiance of divine order has consequences that go well beyond what is immediately apparent. These teachings were interpreted by humans as the necessity of self-awareness, humility, and respect for both natural and spiritual laws. Human existence necessitates adherence to moral and ethical principles and an understanding that decisions affect one's own fate as well as the fate of the larger community, much like the heavens follow a divine rhythm. Enoch gained a deep understanding of the duality of existence and the effects of human behavior through his experience with paradise and judgment in the third heaven. In a graphic representation of justice and mercy, the good were rewarded with light and peace, while the bad were imprisoned and suffered. The idea that life is a sequence of decisions, each with weight and significance, was strengthened by this contrast. Moral discernment, obedience, and faith were not merely theoretical qualities. They were necessary for overcoming life's obstacles and temptations. Humanity is continually put to the test, and Enoch recognized that spiritual development and alignment with the divine plan are defined by one's capacity to make moral decisions in the face of uncertainty or adversity. The wandering and recording angels of the fifth and sixth heavens, as well as the celestial mechanics seen in the fourth heaven, represented the complex interdependence of all hierarchies and the delicate balance of creation. Under the direction of angels, the sun, moon, and stars moved. Each orbit and rotation reflected the harmony and accuracy of God. Similarly, the angels recording human deeds reminded Enoch that nothing escapes observation and that accountability exists on both spiritual and temporal planes. This acted as a metaphor for modern life. Every choice we make, every action we take, even the smallest gestures add to a greater whole. Being watchful in one's thoughts, words, and actions is not just a recommendation. It is a spiritual necessity and a way to take part in the ongoing justice and order that sustain life. With their sacred thrones and protectors of cosmic mysteries, the seventh and eighth heavens taught lessons in respect and sacred duty. Enoch saw seraphim and cherubim performing unceasing worship and guardianship, representing loyalty, devotion, and attentiveness. They served as a reminder to him that humility and commitment are necessary for genuine spiritual understanding, and that knowledge devoid of reverence can be harmful. Curiosity is natural, but it needs to be restrained by ethical boundaries and respect, as demonstrated by the mysteries of constellations and universal secrets. Although knowledge and insight are also entrusted to humans, they can be misused or pursued without a moral foundation, which can result in imbalance and spiritual danger. Enoch recognized that obedience necessitates active participation, attentiveness, and a heart in line with divine values. It is not passive. These lessons were magnified to their fullest extent by the experiences of the ninth and 10th heavens. Witnessing the glory of God, the throne, and the full scope of creation revealed the scale and intricacy of divine authority. The limits that both humans and angels must work within were represented by the hybrid creatures, cosmic prisons, and forbidden knowledge that Enoch saw. In this context, faith meant acting honorably in spite of ignorance, accepting limitations without giving up, and having faith in the divine plan, even when it was still partially hidden. This meant that humanity was encouraged to respect the moral frameworks found in both creation and spiritual law, to pursue wisdom responsibly, and to embrace life's mysteries with humility. The significance of alertness and discernment was also brought home by Enoch's journey. The angels represented unwavering awareness and accountability, whether they were documenting actions, controlling elements, or defending forbidden realms. In a similar vein, humans are called to maintain vigilance in terms of both personal ethics and awareness of the social, moral, and spiritual forces that shape life. Reflection, integrity, and attentiveness strengthen obedience to divine principles. Enoch realized through studying the heavens that the laws governing the cosmos require deference, focus, and alignment. This serves as a reminder that humans also function within structures that dictate outcomes, interpersonal relationships, and spiritual development. The connection between divine design and human behavior was another crucial lesson learned. Enoch realized that nothing in creation happens in a vacuum. Human actions, hybrid beings' outcomes, and angelic behavior are all woven into a larger scheme of things. The biblical idea that faith is relational and active, impacting both the self and the outside world, is further supported by this symbolism. In modern terms, it implies that moral behavior, acts of compassion, and adherence to spiritual guidance have far-reaching consequences that are not immediately apparent. As a result, the obligation to behave morally becomes both cosmic and personal, recognizing the wider effects of human actions on creation. Enoch internalized the harmony between awe and humility, knowledge and obedience, and curiosity and restraint during his journey. He understood that spiritual development is a continuous process of alignment with divine principles, a deliberate commitment to faithfulness, ethical action, and moral vigilance. It is not just about learning or seeing miracles. These timeless lessons provide direction for overcoming contemporary obstacles, moral conundrums, and the quest for knowledge in an uncertain and complex world. Enoch's experiences demonstrated how divine wisdom functions through structure, consequence, and example. All of the layers and people in the heavens reflect human life, highlighting the necessity of moral behavior, steadfast perseverance, and thoughtful consideration of the ethical and spiritual aspects of life. Along with humility and discernment, obedience and vigilance are not just spiritual ideals, they are necessary means of engaging in the continuous, divinely ordained order of creation. Enoch's lessons were intended to shed light on the human journey by demonstrating the importance of spiritual integrity, growth, and understanding, as well as the importance of obeying God's will, respecting divine boundaries, and carefully pursuing knowledge. The images of the 10 heavens remained vivid in Enoch's mind as he returned to earth, their importance and weight undeniable. Every layer of the universe, every angelic responsibility, and every secret he had seen held lessons that were not just historical or theoretical, but also extremely applicable to modern life. He came to see that the difficulties that people face today are reflected in the obedience of angels, the penalties meted out to the fallen, and the complex coordination of celestial mechanics. The need for alertness, discernment, and ethical responsibility is still as pressing today as it was in the time of Genesis, despite a world that is constantly distracted, morally ambiguous, and changing quickly. Enoch recognized that the universe in all its majesty was a reflection of human decisions. Loyalty and honesty were rewarded, pride and recklessness had repercussions, and unbridled curiosity could result in danger. Enoch's experiences made him think about what makes people curious. People today come across information and experiences that, although alluring, may have unintended consequences, much like he had seen forbidden knowledge in the 10th heaven. The moral and spiritual quandaries of daily life, temptations, unverified knowledge, and opportunities to act without understanding are the contemporary equivalent of hybrid beings or sealed secrets. Enoch's journey demonstrated how curiosity can result in development and insight when it is tempered by moral consciousness and humility. Pursuit, however, motivated by pride or a desire for power, reflects the rebellion of the fallen angels and serves as a reminder to humanity that knowledge is inextricably linked to discretion and wisdom. This lesson promotes introspection. How do we handle life's unknowns? Do we behave reverently, or do we go beyond the bounds intended to maintain harmony and balance? The heavens' moral order provided guidance on the importance of decisions and their effects. Enoch saw a principle that is still important today when he observed the separation of the righteous from the wicked. Deeds matter for their long-term spiritual impact as well as their immediate effects. Relationships, careers, social obligations, and personal integrity are just a few of the situations in modern life where moral judgments must be made. The cosmic order he saw demonstrated that even the smallest deeds of obedience or poor decisions have consequences within a larger moral context. It serves as a reminder that being watchful in both thought and action, paying attention to justice, and being in line with a higher purpose are not idealistic concepts, but rather useful strategies for overcoming obstacles in life. As Enoch's journey demonstrates, spiritual insight necessitates humility as well as attentiveness. The angels carrying out their responsibilities, which included monitoring celestial bodies and keeping track of human actions, represented the ever-present accountability and unseen forces that preserve creation's equilibrium. This inspires viewers of today to reflect on their own responsibilities. The heavens serve as a reminder that life's course is shaped by invisible forces in a society that is frequently preoccupied with instant satisfaction and outside approval. According to Enoch, spiritual awareness entails more than just ritual or belief. It necessitates ethical contemplation, self-awareness, and an awareness that decisions, even those that are invisible to others, have an impact on the moral fabric of life. In the modern world, Enoch's struggle between revelation and restraint is extremely relevant. Though these gifts come with responsibilities, humanity has never had greater access to knowledge, technology, and exploration opportunities. He learned a valuable lesson from the forbidden visions he saw. Not all knowledge should be applied blindly. This is comparable to modern problems like moral decision-making, technology use, and the quest for knowledge or power at the expense of long-term effects. Viewers are prompted to stop, think about the consequences of their actions, and try to strike a balance between caution and curiosity when they reflect on these similarities. Enoch's journey provides a timeless example of how to engage with the world thoughtfully, highlighting the importance of humility, reverence, and ethical restraint in navigating life's visible and invisible facets. The human experience of boundaries and order is also reflected in the imagery of angels carrying out exacting tasks, hybrid beings, and cosmic prisons. These limits, personal, ethical, and social, are frequently tested in contemporary society. But Enoch's observations show that boundaries are not arbitrary. Rather, they are meant to preserve, protect, and guide life. The lessons of the heavens serve as a reminder that boundaries give things structure, that laws are safeguards rather than barriers, and that stability and progress are guaranteed when moral and spiritual principles are followed. Viewers can think about how to respect ethical and spiritual boundaries in their own lives by thinking back on these lessons, realizing that doing so is essential to both individual and societal well-being. Faith is extremely relevant to modern life, as Enoch saw in the deeds of the angels and the righteous. It is an active force that manifests itself in decisions, focus, and alignment with a greater good. Faith offers guidance and stability in a world full of uncertainty, difficulties, and moral ambiguity. Enoch's journey serves as a reminder that faith is a lived practice that influences choices, directs interactions, and fosters understanding rather than a passive belief. It challenges contemporary viewers to consider how their own faith, in whatever form it takes, can impact not only their own development, but also the welfare of others around them. Lastly, Enoch's experience serves as a reminder to consider the wider effects of human behavior. The heavens depicted a universe where every decision counts, and where vigilance, obedience, and ethical awareness are necessary rather than optional. Viewers in the modern era are encouraged to reflect on how their behavior either supports or upsets the harmony of their social, spiritual, and personal lives. By internalizing these teachings, people can approach life with a stronger sense of purpose, accountability, and mindfulness. This is motivated by the idea of a universe in which morality, order, and divine supervision all coexist in complex harmony. The call becomes intensely personal as viewers consider how relevant Enoch's journey is to today. How do we deal with curiosity, temptation, and moral dilemmas? In a complicated world, how can we develop faith, alertness, and ethical insight? The 10 heavens, their occupants, and their secret realities act as a mirror and a guide, provoking introspection about our decisions and how we live in accordance with higher ideals. Viewers are encouraged to approach life with reflection, behave honorably, and accept the timeless lessons of obedience, faith, and reverence by witnessing the cosmic order and the results of rebellion. Taking part in these reflections is an invitation to take action rather than just an intellectual exercise. Viewers are urged to reflect on the ethical and spiritual aspects of their own lives, to think about the consequences of their decisions, and to follow a path of spiritually attuned, ethical, and mindful living. Because it reflects the human struggle with curiosity, responsibility, and faith, Enoch's journey through the heavens is still relevant today. It provides timeless guidance for navigating the complexities of modern life while staying in line with the divine order. One question lingers, almost like a whisper in the soul, as the visions of the 10 heavens fade into memory. What have you really learned from this divine journey? Enoch's journey was a mirror reflecting the decisions, obligations, and spiritual consciousness that characterize human existence, rather than just being a story about angels, cosmic structures, or forbidden knowledge. From the 10th heaven, where the complete secrets of creation and God's throne were revealed, to the first heaven, where winds and storms were controlled, the wonders he saw all served as prompts to consider our own lives. It is now up to each of us to think about how the lessons of obedience, faith, and vigilance that were taught in every layer of the heavens apply to the world we live in today. Are we moving forward mindlessly, disregarding the ethical and spiritual ramifications of our choices, or are we on a path of consciousness and integrity? You are now a part of this journey as viewers. The purpose of this tale, which is based on religious writings and old visions, is to elicit contemplation. Consider your own curiosity. Do you pursue knowledge with humility and accountability? Or do you allow your desire for knowledge or power to trump caution and respect? The hybrid creatures, the fallen angels, and the cosmic prisons that Enoch saw serve as sobering reminders that disrespecting others has far-reaching repercussions. Think about your own moral compass, the decisions you make every day, and how each one fits, or doesn't fit, with the larger spiritual order that Enoch saw. The structure and beauty of the heavens demonstrate how much more interconnected life is than we frequently think. In the same way that angels carefully control the elements, keep track of actions, and preserve cosmic harmony, our own deeds have an impact on the fabric of life. Being obedient, vigilant, and attentive are not ideals. Rather, they are useful strategies for surviving in a world full of opportunities and difficulties. When viewed with humility, integrity, and respect, the divine plan, with all its enigmas and limitations, is a framework that allows humanity to thrive. We are encouraged to develop a life of ethical contemplation, purposeful living, and conscious awareness by paying attention to and internalizing these teachings. This is your chance to discuss the story and its ramifications. Think about what it means to act morally, to walk in faith, and to respect the values that uphold both spiritual and material existence. As you think, consider, and ask questions, the trip through the heavens becomes yours as well, not just Enoch's. In your own life, how do you handle temptation, moral ambiguity, or the lure of knowledge that is prohibited? The narrative pushes you to take deliberate, wise, and respectful action while developing a character that is consistent with timeless values. We encourage you to participate in the Bible Says community as part of this contemplation. To learn more about timeless wisdom and thought-provoking biblical tales, subscribe to the channel. Tell us how this journey has changed your perspective in a comment, along with your name, city, and the time you are watching this video. Sending a super thanks connects you to a larger audience looking for truth, understanding, and spiritual engagement, in addition to encouraging the production of more content like this. These minor deeds serve to emphasize the main point. Involvement, consciousness, and adherence to higher ideals enhance not only your individual path, but also the group's experience of education and introspection. The link in the description provides access to the English versions of the Book of Enoch and the complete Bible 88 books for those who are motivated to learn more. The structure of the heavens, Enoch's journey, and the hidden layers of knowledge that ancient prophets preserved for humanity are all further explained in these texts. You can continue the journey by investigating these works, which will help you gain a deeper understanding of spiritual responsibility, divine order, and the moral lessons found throughout the universe. Engaging with these sacred texts allows you to bridge the gap between ancient revelation and modern reflection by establishing a direct connection to the source material that informs the visions Enoch experienced. The story leaves an awe-inspiring impression as the last pictures of angels, cosmic realms, and divine thrones disappear. Enoch's journey pushes us to look higher and see the heavens as reflections of our own moral and spiritual obligations rather than as far-off mysteries. It serves as a reminder that life is a fine balance of decision-making, introspection, and obedience, that humility must temper curiosity, and that being watchful in our thoughts, words, and actions shapes not only our own fate, but also the world around us. There are opportunities to act honorably, to align with higher ideals, and to actively engage in the moral and spiritual currents that permeate existence at every moment. In the end, this trip is an invitation, a call to live mindfully, to learn from the heavens, and to consider the deep meaning of divine order. Examine your own decisions, deeds, and journey by using Enoch's eyes as a lens. Think about the universe's structure and beauty, the existence of responsibility, and the opportunity for development and understanding that each choice presents. With their angels, secrets, and unfathomable visions, the and heavens are not far-off abstractions. Rather, they are a reflection of the moral, ethical, and spiritual aspects of life that affect everyone in the modern world. As you continue this narrative, keep in mind that participation is a necessary component of the process. Join a community delving deeply into biblical wisdom by subscribing, leaving a comment with your name, city, and time, and sending a heartfelt thank you. For more understanding, read the 88 books of the complete Bible and the Book of Enoch. Let the wonder and awe of this journey encourage introspection and meaningful living. Allow Enoch's divine journey's imagery, its thrones, angels, and cosmic secrets to stay with you as a reminder that the universe, in all its complexity, demands attentive action, faith, and vigilance. The last image remains, a universe of divine majesty, order, and mystery, where moral consciousness, curiosity, and obedience come together. Enoch's journey transforms into more than just a narrative. It becomes a challenge, a mirror, and an inspiration. What will you take away from this experience? What steps will you take to make sure that every decision you make, every thought you have, and every action you take reflects the integrity and attentiveness that the divine structure requires? Each viewer is encouraged to reposition in the universe, their part in the story that is being told, and the spiritual path that transcends the ordinary into the extraordinary by the answers, which are profound, timeless, and personal. Do you know that Enoch, a man mentioned briefly in the book of Genesis, witnessed secrets of the heavens that stretch far beyond anything human minds have imagined? Secrets so profound, so mysterious, that even the most learned scholars of our time can scarcely comprehend their full scope. For centuries, the story of Enoch has lingered at the edges of biblical knowledge, almost like a whisper, waiting to be heard. In the Western Bible, he appears only briefly, a man who walked with God, and then he was no more, because God took him. But the Ethiopian Bible, one of the oldest and most complete biblical texts in existence, reveals a far greater story. Here, Enoch is not just a footnote in history. He becomes a traveler of realms unseen, a witness to the divine, and a recorder of mysteries that touch both the cosmos and the human soul. The human fascination with the unknown, what lies beyond our senses, beyond our skies, beyond our world, has never faded. From the earliest civilizations to modern society, we have looked upward and wondered, what exists above us? What secrets do the heavens hold? This curiosity, universal and timeless, finds a voice in the story of Enoch. His journey is not merely a tale of angels and cosmic realms. It is a reflection of humanity's enduring desire to glimpse the unimaginable. It is about our longing to understand the forces that govern existence and to encounter the divine in ways that challenge the boundaries of reality itself. Historically, Enoch occupies a unique place in biblical literature. In Genesis, he is counted among the ancestors of Noah, yet his life is marked by a peculiar distinction. He did not face death as the rest of mankind. Instead, he was taken directly by God, leaving behind a legacy shrouded in mystery. The Ethiopian Book of Enoch, sometimes called 1 Enoch, expands on this narrative with extraordinary detail. It describes his ascension through multiple heavens, each more wondrous and terrifying than the last, where he encounters angels, celestial courts, and visions of creation and judgment. These accounts are not mere flights of fancy. They are deeply rooted in ancient tradition, passed down through generations, preserving knowledge that many modern readers have never encountered. As we prepare to explore this story, it is important to recognize what makes it extraordinary. Enoch's journey is not linear. It is layered with experiences that defy ordinary understanding. He sees realms where angels oversee the elements, monitor human deeds, and guard cosmic secrets. He witnesses punishments that highlight divine justice and mercy, and he glimpses paradises beyond imagination. Yet among these wonders lie warnings, visions of beings and events that should not exist within human comprehension, creatures of enormous stature, forces of divine judgment, and mysteries deliberately hidden from mankind. The Ethiopian texts insist that these revelations were granted to Enoch not for mere curiosity, but to prepare humanity to understand the scope of divine order and the consequences of defiance. Imagine for a moment the awe Enoch must have felt as he moved from wonder. Each level reveals more about the structure of creation, the hierarchy of angels, and the moral weight of human actions. What he saw was intended to teach lessons far beyond what we normally learn from earthly life. Between the divine and human realms, a messenger carrying knowledge that could transform understanding if only it were approached with reverence and faith. The story resonates even today because it confronts us with questions that are timeless. What is our place in creation? How do our actions ripple across the universe? And what truths are hidden from us, waiting for those willing to seek them carefully? Throughout this documentary, we will follow Enoch's extraordinary passage through the 10 heavens, a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the cosmos, about angels, and about God's interaction with humanity. Each heaven presents its own marvels, dangers, and revelations, showing both the beauty and the gravity of divine law. This is not a story of fiction. It is a sacred narrative preserved over millennia, meant to inspire contemplation, reflection, and awe. As we move forward, keep your mind open, your curiosity alive, and your attention focused on the details that unfold, because each revelation will build upon the last, guiding us deeper into the unseen world that Enoch walked. Before we step further into this journey, take a moment to become part of this exploration. Subscribe to the Bible Says channel to follow the full story of Enoch and the 10 heavens. Send a super thanks if you want to support the creation of more videos like this. And as you watch, share your experience with us. Comment your name, the city you are watching from, and the exact time when you saw this video. If you wish to explore further, the complete Bible 88 books and the Book of Enoch in English are available via the link in the description. Your participation ensures that these ancient stories continue to reach new audiences, revealing mysteries that have been preserved through generations. For thousands of years, believers have been captivated by the mystery and divine favor that surrounded Enoch's life. He was more than just a name in the genealogies of Genesis. Enoch stands out in a world where human existence is short. He is described in Genesis 5:24 with the straightforward yet profound statement, "Enoch walked with God, then he was no more because God took him." These succinct and mysterious words allude to a life that went beyond the typical course of mortality and was lived in intimate communion with the divine. Enoch's journey took him to places that ordinary people could only dream of, in contrast to other members of his lineage who lived and died. His legacy has influenced innumerable interpretations and writings, particularly in the Ethiopian Bible's preserved texts. For Enoch, walking with God was not a passive experience. It suggested a purposeful, conscious devotion and a recurring awareness of the divine presence that influenced his choices, actions, and thoughts. Despite being completely human, this man had a deep understanding of holiness. His life served as a reflection of the conflict that exists between human curiosity and obedience, between the need to be humble in order to stay in accordance with God's will and the desire to explore the unknown. Because he dealt with issues like the meaning of life, the secrets of the cosmos, and the difficulty of staying faithful in a world full of distractions, temptations, and uncertainties, he is relatable, not because he was flawless. Enoch demonstrated his intimacy with God in ways that went beyond ceremonial practices or outward manifestations of religiosity. According to the scriptures, one has an ongoing, nearly conversational relationship with the Creator. This man recognized that faith was about a continuous synchronization of the heart and mind with divine principles, not just about rituals or rules. The path of righteousness frequently requires courage, perseverance, and the willingness to venture into unknown territory, both physically and spiritually. His life serves as a mirror for anyone who has ever struggled with doubt or sought guidance. A more thorough look at the remarkable aspects of his life can be found in the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, an old manuscript that has been preserved outside the conventional canon of Western scriptures.